Okay, everything is live, YouTube and recording. The first committee I have is planning and zoning. If we're okay to start, Mr. Burley.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Manager's update, I have two items. The outstanding items are just reminders. I have nothing new on them. The library sign, I finally got some information from the library about what they were looking for. And so I placed that attached to your, attached to your agenda. I'm going to pull that up on my screen right now. They're looking for a sign in one or two locations. You see where the circles are here at Perry and Greensburg Pike, and the other over here. Now, for your information, the sign we currently have over there that says Forest Hills Westinghouse Recreation Lodge is currently 74.5 inches long, and from top to bottom, from top to ground, the very pinnacle here, the ground is 77.25 inches. On this side, our sign is of course smaller. It's I think this is backwards. Well, maybe not. It's 11 foot 4 inches long. That's the sign over here. And it's 20.5 high from the concrete base to the top. If you add another 5 inches to the concrete base, that's about 25.5 inches. This is what they were looking at. Sign that's 72 inches wide, and they just show 48 inches from here to there. I'm not exactly sure how much that is. I would say it's probably at least a foot or more based on this size, but I could be wrong. Maybe somebody who's more scientifically inclined would be able to show that better. And this is the wording they want on the sign or signs. That's what they're requesting. So I asked Mr. Corbel, I gave you the rules from our zoning ordinance on signs. This is in the R2 district, so I don't know if that makes a difference. I didn't see anything specific to R2 in there, but the general zoning requirements are attached to your agenda for reference. I realize you didn't have the chance to read it, but I just wanted to make sure you had it. And I don't know if there's any restrictions size-wise or location-wise. That would be up to Mr. Corbel or somebody who has a good knowledge of the zoning ordinance to discuss. But that's what they're looking for.
Steve, I can just jump in.
Go ahead.
From the sizing perspective, I think it's satisfactory, but I have to triple check what the requirements are. But being that it's in R2, this is a similar issue that council faced with respect to the pool sign. And so if you wanted to put it there without requiring variances, et cetera, we would just pass the motion at a future meeting indicating that we are of the view that it's able to be put there because of it helps with the residents, et cetera. That section of the zoning ordinance that we discussed a couple months ago. So I don't really see an issue with this. I just think the council should focus on if you want it, and if you do, where you want it, and if you're satisfied with the signage itself.
And that's where I have some questions. Is it purely an ordinance issue, or we have to accept what they give us, or what?
I don't think so. That's up to council.
Okay.
Yeah, the only
question.
ordinance.
I have a couple of issues. Mr. Belay, may I speak?
Yes, please.
Okay. Here's the deal. It's my understanding that the library would like to have signage to drive people to the library, which means as they go across Greensburg Pike, they should see a sign that says turn right. And I could accept that. What she has proposed, that the library has proposed, concerns me on a number of levels. And I you guys can help me with this. One, we were very careful about the signage around the building. It's all three-dimensional, kind of an Art Deco style lettering. This is not that. The lettering on those the document she sent us is different. Second, there's a lot of deep color in that. It's green. We did not do a lot of color in our building. And the third thing is, if you look at the signage that was proposed, it's got a large arch, and our building is very horizontally designed. So it doesn't match with our building. Nothing in the sign that she gave us matches our building. Plus, it's a very large sign, not fitting with the design of our building. So I have a lot of problems with what was presented today. Anyone else have thoughts on that one?
Well, my question is, do we want the sign to coincide with the architecture of the building, or do we want it to stand out as being different with the building?
Yeah, and my perception is this is our borough building that has a library in it. It's not the C.C. Miller Library that has a borough attached to it. And that's what I'm perceiving these signs are doing. And they're very large. I think it's fine to have something on Greensburg Pike that points us to the library. Other than that, anything within the grounds of our building should be all fitting together with our design, our font design, our style, and this does not do it.
Any other opinions on it? Awesome.
You have
Yes.
three hands raised. You have
Angelo.
Angelo, Mr.
Yeah, Angelo.
Watkins.
Mr. Watkins and the mayor had theirs up first.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mayor. Mayor?
My
You're up.
concerns are aligned with what Mr. Lawrence had to say. So I think that while I certainly understand the need to, first of all, anybody who needs to find a library, in my opinion, is not doing so by following signs along the pike. They're Googling it, they're getting their directions, or they're putting it in their phone and driving there. Number one. Number two, the placement of the signs also can become very confusing because we have our Westinghouse Rec Center there. We also have our own borough building there. Lastly, they are not aligned with, so yeah, Steve, can we go over that again? Where do they want to place signs specifically?
Where the circle is here to the right of our lower sign.
So
And-
for someone who's unfamiliar with that, what are you thinking that that's the borough building, or are you thinking that's the library
If
now?
I see that sign, I think it's the library.
Exactly. That's kind of my whole point. I mean, I'm not a fan of the signs. I'm not it just, you know, at the end of the day, the spirit behind the use of the library in our building was to afford our residents and local community residents a place to kind of use as a library space, right? But to Jack's point, it's a borough building that has, you know, a library as one of the amenities as a part of it, not the other way around. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Anybody else?
If I
Yeah,
could
Jack,
go
are you-
next,
Hand raised, you go by that.
Okay,
or-
Jack. Marcus, are you? Hey, Marcus.
I agree pretty much what everyone said. When I heard about it first, I thought it would be more like a street sign layout, like one of those blue signs with white lettering or like a white arrow, exactly what Frank said, one on each direction from Greensburg Pike with the arrow pointing to our future Tomasic Way, and then maybe one at the fence of the ball field turning left, so where the library is. You know, I thought more like street signs. Those looked more like, I don't know, advertisement signs, or they don't even have an arrow. I mean, at least we have to have an arrow. I think it should be simpler in design, like a street sign is. I don't know, blue with white lettering, Arial or whatever it is.
You know, so anyhow, my thought is we reject all these proposals and just go for a simple sign on the right-hand side of Greensburg Pike, somewhere along close to the turning lane, and that's it.
Bill, you have Mr. Watkins and Mr. Biocchi both have their hands up.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes, I see. Oh, I guess, Mr. Watkins?
As I drive through the county, I see the signs that Marcus referenced. And you can drive down any street, and you'll just see a sign that's got an arrow pointing towards the library. I would be in favor of that, especially since we already have a sign that's consistent with the architecture of the building that lists the library as being there. So if we had a sign so that northbound traffic and southbound traffic would know to turn onto the street, and another one back by the ball field, that should be sufficient to get anybody who wants to go there. And anybody who may just be out on a whim and say, oh, there's a library, let's check it out.
Mr. Bianchi?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in alignment with what the mayor said. I don't believe that placing a sign in the front of that is going to help. It would seem like it's the library and not the borough building. I think if we're going to put any sign at all, what I would do would be to have a sign somewhere near the entrance to the library, a small sign with an arrow pointing that says library, period. I'm not even sure that we even need street signs directing anyone to the library. I think most people will look it up on the website and find it that way. But but again, I'm opposed to the signs that have been proposed thus far.
Well, I'm opposed to the sign, and I mean, there's sometimes issues where you can put a sign further up the road saying that, library ahead, turn right. And, you could do something like that, but the sign itself, I don't really think it goes along with the architecture structure of our building. And I'm suggesting that we need something else done besides that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, well then, if no one else has anything to say about it, then I will let her know that a directional sign would be appropriate, more in line with the kind you see elsewhere, like library and an arrow, and that this sign emphasizes the library to the detriment of the borough building. I'll make sure she's aware of that and pass that on. Is there anybody else that has anything else related to that? I'm sorry.
I would
Patty
just
is
like to say
raising her hand.
Yeah, Patty?
the place for the sign that they have designed would be maybe right next to the entrance of the library against the building on the wall. Kind of like, here's the library, the entrance is right here. I think putting it out in the middle of the street, especially in two places, is just overdoing it. Whereas directional signs that you can put, sometimes you see them on traffic posts. Like I know in Wilkinsburg, they have signs directing you to the library from Route 30 off to the side, and other places have things like that, library this way with an arrow. I don't think that whole entire thing with who communities are served and everything, that belongs
Yeah.
on the library itself, or possibly even inside the library.
If I could just explain too, she told me this is the same sign they're putting in Edgewood. And I did not show it, but if you could walk down the hallway behind Marcus there and go outside, you'd see that there is a sign that says library
Right.
on the outside. Plus it does say CC Miller on the door, Forest Hills, I believe, branch. So
Yeah.
If nobody has anything else, and that's what I'll pass on to her. Something simpler is fine, etc. And we'll go from there. The second
like
item,
we
I'm sorry, is that okay?
Let's,
It looks
Jack, you have
settled
something?
on that.
Okay.
And yeah, Mr. Belay, it looks like we
Yes, yes.
settled on that, and it's good to move forward.
Yeah, I'd like to settle to reject the design and get something else that maybe they can come up with, or as a council, we can come up with together.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion? Like,
Yes, Marcus?
seems like Jack was, he pretty much knows now what all of council feel. If Jack agrees and Steve agrees, I wonder if we can cut it a little bit, make it more efficient. If Jack talks directly to Aaron from the library, Steve,
Okay.
what do you think about that?
Me, that's fine with me if that's how you want to handle it. That's
If Jack wants to handle it like that,
sure. If he's okay with it, that's fine. However you
Yeah,
want to
that's
do it.
fine with me. Mhm.
Yes, sir. I will do that. Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Just to
Thank
make
you.
it a
Thank
little
you,
more
Jack.
efficient.
Let me know, Mr. Lawrence, if you need contact information. I'll get that to you. Okay.
Well, we'll catch up in the morning and figure it out.
Okay.
No crisis.
All
All
right.
right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. My last item, just a reminder from last month, you do have one slot on the zoning hearing board, and it has been a little bit active recently because of a couple of issues. So usually you move one of the alternates up, and of course, that's your decision, not mine. I listed again here the 3 alternates. I'm not real familiar with any of them, but usually in the past, what council has done is take the longest serving alternate and move that person up. That's not what you have to do. That's up to you. And if you know these 3 people and would prefer to move one or the other one up, that'd be up to you. But I just need to know a direction from you. I'd like to contact whoever you select to make sure they're okay with full-time membership, because some people prefer being alternate, not full-time membership. And then I would put that on the June 15th agenda so we can get a regular person in.
Bill,
Yeah, Patty. Yes, Patty.
I would
Mhm.
like to recommend that we advance Joshua Hyman to full-time regular membership from alternate. He's been there, he's been on, I think, since 2020, and the others came in later. So I think he would be the one that would be most eligible to move forward. I know he's interested.
I'd
Okay,
Yeah, I
support
agree.
that idea.
Yeah, I agree. I know
That's great.
Joshua very well. Mhm.
I will contact him if nobody else disagrees. I'll contact him to make sure he's willing to accept that. If for some reason he wouldn't, do you want to just go down the line based on seniority? So that Ms. Lubin would be the next person, just in case? Is that acceptable? I'm
What do
assuming,
you
okay,
think?
okay,
think,
Okay,
Is that
all right.
okay?
That's all I have then. So I will put that on for a vote, assuming he or one of the other ones accept, but I'll try for him first. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Okay, Don, do you have something for us?
Yeah, I just have 2 short items for discussion tonight. The dead tree that we removed at the corner of Perry and Barclay, which borders close to the parking lot of the lodge. The tree and shrub is recommending that we take one of our trees that we have in inventory behind the rec center and plant one of those ivy silk lilacs in that position. That's their recommendation. So if you have any other choices, please let me know.
Okay,
Dawn,
Tom, go ahead.
Yes. Yes,
and I
Barbara?
believe Mr. Morris knows this as well. Last year, the Late Bloomers Garden Club requested that they would like to donate a sign. I'm sorry, a sign. Too much about
Tree.
signs tonight. Tree. And we wanted a native tree to go in there. I already talked to the Tree and Shrub Committee about it. If it's the same place, is this across from the library where you're referring to?
Correct.
Yes, I had talked with the Tree and Shrub Committee about that, and I believe they have money set aside for this. So I'm hoping that that could be requested instead of one of the lilac trees you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. That's fine with me. I mean, I'm just letting you know what the Tree and Shrub recommended. That's all.
Okay, well, I'll see them tomorrow and
Yeah,
firm it up. Thank you.
we'll be at the meeting.
Thank you.
The other thing is for code, the last couple of months, I've issued several violation letters for high grass and weeds. And today's the 7th, and as of right now, as we speak, I've issued already 8 citations for people who did not comply to the letters that I had written to them. So just to let you know and fill you in what's going on. That's really all I have tonight.
Okay. Thanks, Don.
Mhm.
The next we have any committee business that we need to report that is important to us right now. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we're done.
Okay, just give me about 10 seconds and we'll move to finance. Okay, I'm fine with going ahead on finance, Ms.
Okay,
DeMarco, if you're
please,
okay.
if you could commence with manager's update, Mr. Morris.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said, could you commence with the manager's update, please?
Yes, right. Okay, first, I gave you the information on cash flow through May 31st, and just real quick, I'll flash that on the screen here. The solid red line is the current year, and again, it's right about average for where we have been over the last 6 years. It's a little bit higher than some years, a little bit lower than others. It's doing fairly well, so I really don't have any comments on that other than just to remind everybody that, again, it doesn't necessarily mean this is actually how much cash you have right now. It's a picture of a point in time. And as bills are paid immediately, a few minutes after that, if bills were paid, you could have less. If revenue came in, you could have more. It's just, again, a quick point in time as of May 31st. Does anybody have any questions about it?
Yeah, I just had one question, Steve. Looking forward, do we have any more information about the revision in the property assessment?
No, in fact, I have a note later on to say that I'm under item D. I'm keeping it on the agenda,
Okay.
but I still haven't heard anything official yet. So I
Okay.
don't know.
Okay.
Anybody else on cash flow? Item B, just as a reminder, tomorrow I'm talking with staff again. We're having a staff meeting after lunch, as we typically do on the second Wednesday of every month. And I'm going to remind them about the capital improvements plan. Yeah, I distributed those forms to you folks last month via email, and I asked everybody to begin looking at it. And again, forgetting what's on there now, look at it from the beginning. The only carryover items will, from the beginning, that doesn't make sense. The only carryover items on there will be those that are lease purchase, mainly trucks and other similar equipment. Everything else has to come back through this process of going to council committees and then going to finance committee and being placed on the agenda. The biggest weakness always is with capital improvements plan. Most people tend to pick the first 2 years of the plan and ignore the third, fourth, and fifth year. And we really need to start thinking overall. I mean, I won't be here. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, hopefully I'll be alive, but I probably won't be here in 2025. But you folks need to start thinking as of 2025, what's going to fail? I know it's just an estimate, it's just a projection. You can't guarantee that, but you can take a look at how long the trucks are, how old the trucks are, how long. I don't know what I'm saying. How old the trucks are and how old other equipment is. Certainly the asset management stuff that Mr. Briocchi and Ms. Martin have been working on, that could be a factor over the years as we go through this, because you have a better idea of things than we do now. But you're not going to probably have that fully and functioning before we have to get a capital plan ready. So I emphasize that with staff. That's one of the things that's always the hardest. And usually what happens with most staff is the first thing they do is think, I better get this on here for the next year or two. And that's what they do. They stick it on for, in this case, 2023 and 2024, and they ignore 25, 26, and 27. You need to start thinking long-term, what might you need to do? How much longer will certain things last? So I just emphasize that with you because you're all committee chairs and some of you have more staff within your committee than others, as far as, for example, recreation is part of Ms. Martin and police is part of Mr. Briocchi's and public works as far as Mr. Watkins. Now, I work with all those folks and we try to get things together ahead of time, but it certainly doesn't hurt if you want to sit down and talk, especially if you have thoughts or ideas on projects or equipment or whatever.
Okay.
doesn't hurt to talk now, because I'd like to get forms in by July 1st. So this is just a reminder. If anybody needs any more information, I'd be happy to sit down separately and talk with you or answer questions tonight if you want.
Are there any
Anybody have anything right now?
Any comments from the committee members? I would like to make, Barbara, did you have a comment?
No, I just like the idea, Mr. Morris, of thinking farther ahead. That's really the best way to go at it. And thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, in that context, I would like to point out that we've adopted a number of plans in our borough in the last 2 years. Not only the comprehensive plan, which has a number of goals in it, but also the climate action plan and the active transportation plan. Some of these items do have capital improvements involved or are moving in a direction where capital improvements need to take reflection of the directions of these plans, especially the borough buildings and borough properties, to be looking at our own energy compliance goals and also climate goals. And we ought to look at our procurement procedures for things that we're acquiring, so that we're looking at being in alignment with these goals that we've established in all of our planning. And secondly, I think the asset management system is really something that's really important to be putting in place and begin implementing as an ongoing activity. I know there is a list of assets that are depreciable in our audit report. And I think we at least have to consider those depreciable items and look at a regular schedule of replacement. Things like heating systems, we should not be looking at waiting till they break or when we run out of spare parts and can't repair them anymore. We should look at anticipatory, projections of when major capital items are going to expire. Then if something, accidentally happens, like a truck blows up, you got to deal with that because that's an emergency. But we need to have an ongoing cycle of routine upgrade, routine maintenance, and also projections of the duration of service life for these depreciable assets. So I'm more than happy to work with both of you. I don't know, Mr. Morris, if it would be helpful to go over the goals related to borough property and public works and police as we're planning this capital budget, but I'd be happy to work with you to do that. I don't need to necessarily go to the staff, but I would like to go through those goals.
Well, a couple of things related to all this. First, every member, every chair should feel free to submit your own projects. The only thing I suggest is if you have staff within your department, that you talk to them and maybe just submit one thing rather than both of you submitting two different things. But I typically work closely with the foreman, for example, Jim Thielacker, but if Mr. Watkins wants to sit down with him too, that's certainly fine. And Ms. DeMarco, who doesn't really have a lot of staff other than finance related, you still have issues you want to discuss. The second thing I would mention related to goals is I've tried to, over the years, to put in there in the budget what I think each committee's general consideration should be. And that's what I call council committee perspective, which was developed years ago. And it's in the budget booklet under my budget message. And it lists probably 2 pages of things for almost each committee, questions you should be asking yourself as far as making plans for the next year and beyond. So I would suggest looking for that. Now, council certainly can establish their own much briefer goals overall as a generality or mission statement or whatever, but that is something I would definitely take a look at in the budget book because you'll find that in there.
Page 16 through, I think 20. Yeah, they're in 16 pages, 16 through 20 in the budget message.
There are typical goals or things we do in question format. Asking questions about should we do this, should we do that? I mean, for example, it will ask, should we have a pool? Not because anyone is suggesting we shouldn't, but that's the kind of question you should ask when you're preparing the general fund budget or a capital budget. You should ask that kind of thing. Should we do this? And in most cases, what we're doing, you're probably going to want to continue, but you still should ask that. And I'll refer to something in under my next item here that kind of refers to that too. Does anybody else have anything about the capital plan? So
No.
again, go ahead, Mr. Lawrence. Sorry.
No, nothing. You're pushing back to the old zero budgeting concept of the 70s, and it's a challenge. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, leading into my next item on budget issues, I know Mr. Erbinger wants to talk about this too, but I need to say a couple of things. Do you go ahead, Mr. Erbinger?
You can go first.
Okay. A couple of things I want to mention. Oh heck, what did you just say, Mr. Lawrence? I just went right through my mind.
Zero budgeting.
Oh yeah. Well, the problem with budgets like ours in general is one problem is that there are so many costs in there that are fixed. And by that, I mean, staff really doesn't have a lot of say-so in certain things. If I haven't provided a fixed item list in a number of years, but a few years back, I had the finance chair, I forget who it was, who said staff didn't really do anything because they hardly gave us any numbers. But when I showed them all the numbers that are fixed, like for example, salaries, just one example, that's an obvious example, utilities, you know, so those are the kinds of things that make it more difficult to do a budget. When you're looking at different kinds of budgets, one thing I gave you, and I know Mr. Erbinger wants to go a little bit further with budget talk, I'm not going to take long. I gave you this handout, which you probably can't see, coming from the, I should just put it on the screen, I don't know why I'm doing this, coming from the state's fiscal management handbook that describes budgeting in general in a government. It talks about all types of governments, townships, cities, et cetera, not just boroughs. But I thought that might be a help for you as you're looking at preparing the budget and when we start doing it in August of 2023. But I know one of the things that have been discussed, and I think it's what Mr. Erbinger wants to bring up, was having a general budget meeting possibly in July to discuss things, to bring everybody up to speed on what we're doing and how it works. The only other thing I was going to add, and in this handout, let me see if I can just put it on the screen real quick. Sorry. In this handout, whoops, that's not on your screen, is it? In this handout, there is a bunch of different budget types that it shows as an illustration. A lot of places don't use any of these except the first, mainly because they're so complicated. Zero-based budgeting goes back to the Carter era. Jimmy Carter, as when president, was going to have the federal government use zero-based budgeting as their method for doing a budget. A lot of these other things are very nice, but they're very complicated. They require a lot of staff. We don't necessarily have that. So that kind of puts a limit on it, but you should take a look at that handout. Mr. Erbinger, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to explain that.
So basically it came out discussion we had in last business meeting. So my suggestion to Steve was to populate all the numbers of our finances and end of June. Probably will take about 2 weeks. And then we will have a Saturday morning committee of the whole where we go through our budget, including like year-to-date spend and how does it compare to last year, line by line. And it should be committee of the whole, so every council member is represented, can be part of it. It will be a public meeting. We did something like that years ago in the Westinghouse Rec, where we had like a public committee of the whole meeting, I believe it was. And also we have new members of council questioning some line items on the budget, which are pretty much are historically, like public works labor is all over the place because we have one person dedicated to parks financially, one to roads. You know, like people have questions, and then we can, because nothing is set in stone, and we can always change our budget, how it's structured. We can question every line. And we did it in the past when we really were like dire financial need. We really looked at every single number. Why do we spend $3,000 in postage? Can we spend half? You know, things like that. So I would like to take our time to go through line item by line item, explain to all of us, that Steve can explain to all of us, why is it there? Can we change it? You know, for example, road paving has to be separate. We have some accounts which are physical accounts in our bank, like the pool improvement fund, $14,000 is sitting somewhere in a bank account. Some accounts are virtual, some are not. So really to take our time to talk about it, look at the year-to-date spending, or pretty much the halfway year to spend. I would suggest Saturday morning in the second half of July, after Allison and Steve had time to actually crunch the numbers for end of June, but it doesn't have necessarily to be Saturday morning. I just thought Saturday morning would be good to have time without like running late and things like that. That's my proposal. Committee of the whole, second half of July, after we have our end of June numbers, and we go really line by line and explain everything what we do. We can question everything what we do and so on.
Yeah, the only thing I would suggest for that is you might want to consider having some staff on hand so they can explain different sections.
We
of the
probably would
budget.
have to have at least, I mean, I assumed you would have to be there, definitely. Allison probably would be useful to have too.
Well, it might be helpful to have the chief there,
Yeah,
Jim
and
Thielacker
Emma
there,
Foreman,
Cindy
right.
Sim there, all those
Yeah,
people
I don't
that
know
are on
if a
staff.
Saturday morning is fair to invite all of our staff to have to be there on a Saturday.
I would like to limit that, but I can see what you're
I think
saying.
it would be better if we do it perhaps either at the finance committee and maybe start
No, I
early.
don't want to do it at a regular committee. I want to have it a dedicated time, committee of the whole, because finance committee is only 3 of us or 3 of you. It should be committee of the whole, dedicated time just for that we have a lot of time and don't have to run other meetings are late. So
The only other thing I was going to add to that was too, I'd like to have some kind of organization, especially if I'm going to be there. I don't want it to be what I think you should do. I mean, I've taught budgeting. So, I mean, I'm not worried about that. And I understand our budget fairly well. I may not know what every single line item is because sometimes Cindy has a particular thing or Chuck has a particular thing. And I don't necessarily understand all the things they're doing with it in great detail. I don't mean I don't understand it at all. But I also don't want it to be just me if you are the ones that have questions. On the other hand, I also don't want it to be a free-for-all where we're going to be there at 8 a.m. and it's going to go into 5 p.m.
no, it shouldn't. It should be like Saturday morning. But that's why I think too many staff members, we don't need to.
Well, that's fine. But I'd
Maybe
like to
that
know,
is-
I'd like to know, I'm sorry, go ahead. I'd like to know what the
Here's a thought.
organization is. Go ahead, Mr. Lawrence.
No, please, you guys go ahead. I'll add in later.
Well, all I was going to say is just like to know some organization, some order. I mean, if you want, we could do it in the council room. We'll have to advertise it, of course, which is not a big deal. Once we pick a date, I can put it in the Valley Mirror, but do it in the council room. I'll put it up on the screen for everybody to see, and we can go through revenue line by line.
I would prefer to do it in the community room. So everyone sits around a table. I do like the idea of having a screen somewhere. I don't
Well,
want
there
the
is-
formality of the council room. If you can,
Okay, there is one in this, there is a screen in the community room
Yeah.
too.
so we can just face our table that we can all see the screen, have a rectangular table, everyone sits on it. But I don't want to have a formal, it has to be public. So we have to have some chairs for the public somewhere, but we did,
Yeah.
remember when Frank did the SWOT analysis? That's the kind of meeting I want. Like everyone is in the same level. There's no formality.
Hey,
I
Marcus?
also don't recall what the hours are for the library on a Saturday. Whatever is going on there will be heard in one room versus the other, just so you know. I mean, as we all know.
I know
Yeah,
that
it's
it's
tough.
possible to
Hey,
have,
Marcus, here's,
Yes.
Jack,
Marcus,
would you
here's a
like to
thought.
speak? Yes,
I was thinking, Marcus, can you and I, have some
excuse me,
policy
this is
share?
finance
You
committee.
and I just,
Could
yes,
I
please,
please,
Patty, go ahead.
could I please speak for a moment? I am chair of the finance committee. I would like to have a budget working session. I plan to propose this and before we had a free-for-all conversation. I think it's important also for the public to know about our budget in more detail. And many communities have budget hearings where they go through these kinds of things. And I think to hold a public meeting on our budget is appropriate and would be welcome. And I think if we do it on a committee of the whole time and just start early on, like start at 5 instead of at 7.
We did it in the past. We went literally line by line. It will take a long time. I don't want to stifle because it's running late, people want to go home. It's, first of all, I don't want to have it on Zoom. It should be a face-to-face meeting. And so, I mean, we did like Frank did a SWOT analysis. It was a very productive meeting. It took like 2 or 3 hours, if I remember right. That's the kind of meeting I want to do.
Yeah, I think what Marcus is looking for is not so much community outreach, is that all the people on the council really understand the budget and where we're going.
I mean, the community will be
They don't
invited.
understand anything.
They can be
And
there.
I
It's a
think
public
that's-
meeting.
I think it's a very good idea. And we should focus on, you know, what is the best time for us. I'm fine with any time, but I think Marcus's goal is correct. Let all of us understand the budget. A little less community outreach and just let us know what we're doing on our own before we reach out. Does that help?
Any other discussion on this issue? Otherwise, we will work for a scheduling.
Patty, one
Yep.
thing, I wonder if it would be helpful if council members had specific questions that could be submitted ahead of time. Maybe that might
That would help to focus.
help the plan, if you think
Mm-hmm.
so.
They would be helpful because people should go through the budget before the meeting, and then literally go line by line, but then people should have their questions. And maybe it would be nice if people can prepare them in advance, so Steve has time to actually think about it and maybe get staff feedback. You know? So it would be a good idea to, I mean, if people have new questions at the meeting, fine. But if people have questions in advance, it would be probably very good for Steve and the staff to prepare those questions, answers for those questions. Good idea.
Steve, you had your hand up?
One last thing. There's 80 some pages of budget message in here. So if you have questions, I'll admit I am not perfect, so I don't necessarily anticipate every single thing, but I try like crazy every year. And this is why it takes so long to get this book printed. Well, there was other reasons this year, but this is why it takes so long to get printed. I try every year to give as much detail in here as I possibly can. I don't expect everybody to read 85 pages of this stuff. I understand it's boring, you don't care, but before you go and ask a question, maybe take a look and see if there's something already in here, at least as a start. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time. I am supposed to do a budget message, a budget. My job description says that budget message, prepare the budget, I'm responsible, etc. So that's why I do this. And I try to do it as much detail as I possibly can, not to confuse things, but so that if you have a particular question on a particular line item, you can hopefully find the answer. Maybe not on every single thing, but hopefully find the answer. So please take a look at different sections in there, especially the first 80 some pages.
I totally agree with you. Everyone should read the budget if they haven't done so, and then send questions to you.
I'll support what you said. You do a great job of doing this stuff, but there could be things that some of the newer people or me don't understand, and it could be good to get together. But
Sure. I don't disagree with that.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Property.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have anything on property assessment right now. Bond issue spending, I have 2 more items. Bond issue spending, and I'll try to be brief with that. Let me put it up on the screen here. I just need to get a decision from the committee. That's not the right thing.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
not the right thing either. Oh, it is. Yeah, I'm
It is.
sorry.
It's in the middle of the page.
I'm looking at the other page. Okay, I didn't want to put that one up. I wanted to put something else up, but that's
It's
okay.
small to see, however.
This is what I had last time. Okay, except I made a change in a truck 75 in the bottom line. I showed you how much we had in new money, how much we put toward the fire truck, how much for the backhoe, how much for truck 73 and truck 75 is 73 is on order, 75 has not been ordered. And that's the one that Mr. Thielacker brought up during Public Works last week. If you were to look at his number and throw that in there after you got finished with the new money in the bond issue, that would be a $16,000 deficit. However, you're going to return $91,000 to the bond issue in the fire truck. Hopefully, you're going to sell the old truck. He estimates $10,000 for 73. Hopefully, you're going to sell the old truck 75. He estimates $15,000 for that. If that works out, then remaining from the bond issue would be 100,000 plus, which I show here. Okay,
Steve,
so well, let me finish, please. What I have here is essentially what I need to, what that tells me is, based on what the original plan was, you were going to do those vehicles first, and then you were going to use the excess funds left from the bond issue for the Forest Hills Westinghouse Lodge. If you just go with those numbers, that leaves $100,000 for that. Jim, when he originally gave us the estimate for truck 75, it was much less. So he was suggesting one alternative, if you want to have more money from the bond issue for the lodge, was to put to only take about $50,000 to $70,000 out of the bond issue for truck 75, and then do a 5-year lease purchase, which was what we're doing with most of the trucks right now, and that way pay it off over time. The reason why I'm bringing this up is Jim has said at Public Works that even if he orders it right now, it's probably going to be a year and a half before he sees this truck. So he's trying to get council to say, okay, go ahead and order it. And he's trying to get you to decide what format you want to use as far as use of bond issue funds and or lease purchase. That's what I'm looking for a decision, if possible, for a committee recommendation tonight.
Okay. Steve, I would support that. I would like to hear from my 2 committee members and then any other council members. I think the other thing I wanted to check first is the fire truck payback is over 5 years. Is that correct?
No, the
The
you mean
91,000.
paying back the 91.
Yeah.
Well, the first year we're going to pay about 10,000 back. I don't have that. I should have put that number up here.
But it's
Wait a
not a
minute.
lump sum.
Hold on a second.
It's going to be,
Just-
I thought it was over 5 years that they were going to be paying that back.
No, in the first year right here is the fire budget, and you can see the fire truck down payment, 10,000 is what I estimate will come from the 2022 budget to go back into the bond issue. However, if you look at this right here, where is it now? Right here, we're paying $139,000 for trucks this year. That's for 2 payments, 2 trucks. The old one, last payment, the new one, first payment. Next year, you won't have the new first payment. I'm sorry, you won't have the old truck. So you would have essentially $70,000 to put, if you want, toward paying back that 91,000. So it may not necessarily take 5 years. It may take 2 or 3, depending on how we budget that.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, what would be your pleasure? I would recommend doing the partial lease period for the second truck for truck 75. What is your opinion, those of you on the committee, and then anyone else?
I agree with that, Patty.
Okay. Cecil?
I think you're muted, Cecil.
Yeah. You're on mute. Okay. All right. Anyone else have a comment about that? Otherwise, I will recommend that we do a partial payment on truck 75 and then enough to order the down payment and then plan to do a lease for the remainder of that period. Is that what you need, Steve?
Yeah, Marcus has his hand up.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't see Marcus. Yeah.
And I would like to do what Steve has in his bullets. The balance of $100,000 should be still dedicated for the Westinghouse Lodge.
Right.
But obviously, it would be more than 100,000 if you're doing lease payment. Do
Right.
you ever recommend? Jimmy suggested a range of 50 to 70,000 for the down payment. Do you want to specify a number there? Because I'll probably put a motion on the June 15th agenda to allow him to order it and whatever down payment you recommend.
Yeah, I think to put the down payment out of the bond for whatever he thinks is appropriate. I don't know if it needs to be 20%.
I don't know that for a fact either. I can
You
check.
check with him, and then whatever the required down payment is should come out of that bond, out of the 198,998 that you have listed there, and then the remainder will lease. Marcus?
And it will be kind of cash neutral because we're getting those payments from the fire services fee
Right.
for the truck. So hopefully, if we can line it right, the fire services back payments will pay for that truck.
Okay.
Be cash neutral.
Does anybody else have anything? I can't see everyone if you have your hand
And
raised,
either
so
I can
just
only see
talk.
3 people, so.
I just have one question, please.
Okay,
Well, a comment. I'm sure there's other monies like from the ARPA fund that will be
That's the
dedicated to the lodge, because that
Yes.
100,000 is gonna go real fast.
there
Yeah.
is
For
ARPA
lodge
money.
repairs.
There-
Yeah,
that's the
I'm
next
getting to
item.
ARPA next.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Okay.
Okay.
Are we done with the truck?
I just have
One more-
one, I
Angelo.
just want to make one comment, if I might. I do not want to take up any more time, but frankly, I did not understand the entire discussion. I will go back and read this again. and
Okay,
try
I'll
to
sit with you,
make sense of
Angelo. I'll sit with you and talk about it.
it. Okay, thank you.
And I wonder one clarification. We should do all the motions in process to buy that 75 truck. Like whatever motions we need to do, Steve, and that Jimmy, of course, time is like at the moment like crazy, like lead times. We need to get Jimmy that truck as soon as we can. So
Okay.
whatever motion we need to do, you can give Jimmy the authority, if everyone agrees with me, that he can order it, and we will approve it next week.
Yeah, the
Okay.
thing is, I don't know what the minimum down payment is, so we can't give him a specified number right now because I don't know what that would be.
I'll check and I'll put that
Okay.
number in, whatever
Okay.
it should be in the motion.
Good. All
Okay.
right, and then
All right, now, ARPA, I don't have my huge notes here on ARPA because until we pay for the sewer, I don't know how much is going to be left from that for the lodge. But if you recall, we haven't gotten the second payment for ARPA yet.
Great.
We're going to get a total of 600,000+. We've gotten about half of that now. The other half should be coming any time now. So we estimated about 200, I think 270 or 80 for the sewer regionalization for Alcoasand, which means the remainder, should you want to do that, could go to the Westinghouse Lodge or anything else you want. And you will have to make a decision on that relatively soon because they're already asking us to start showing what we're doing with the money because they want to know. So I'm not quite ready to force you to make a decision yet, but one other thing has come up and I wanted to mention it to you. It's come up through the Turtle Creek COG and elsewhere. It's also come up through some people internally, which I won't get to. I guess I could explain later, but Turtle Creek did a survey to try to find out how municipal officers were using ARPA funds regarding personnel, because we found out apparently that a number of municipalities were giving money to their employees in various amounts. The only ones I've heard from so far have been Swissvale, Pitcairn, and Wilkinsburg. Wilkins hasn't made a decision yet. Wilkinsburg is considering the same thing that you see Pitcairn and Swissvale doing, and that's giving bonuses to employees, full-time or part-time, giving additional money to police, and or giving a bonus or something to full-time and part-time employees. As an employee, believe me, I'm not recommending you do any of that. That's up to you. But I just want to let you know that this has got, the word on this has gotten out. I was not going to put this even on the screen yet because I fear this is a personnel issue, but personnel are already aware of it, that this is going on in other communities. So I figured it doesn't hurt to tell you this. I'm not telling you to do this. I just want to let you know that this is now an issue that's being spread around different communities, including in the Turtle Creek COG.
I noted
Yeah.
that I did report from the Pennsylvania, I'll call Marcus in a minute. I did report from the Pennsylvania Municipal League on their statewide survey. And very few places statewide have done what you talk about. Some of them did put it into their general expenses, but they've mostly been using them for stormwater repairs, storm and sewer repairs, or for community development funds or revolving loan funds of some sort. The other ones, some have done offset of personnel costs, but I didn't hear any reports at the statewide level of people giving bonuses to their staff. Marcus.
Just one thing before, I've tried to ask other managers across the state. I have not heard anything back because this is fairly new from the COG. It just came out. And
Yeah.
again, I wasn't going to make a big deal about it, but I heard through the grapevine that some of our people have heard about this already.
Marcus.
May I ask?
I would like to move that to executive session next week. And Steve, as a little bit of homework, can you please have at hand the number of employees, full-time and part-time? Probably, I don't know, end of 2020, 21, 22, because it's probably different. But I would like to stop the discussion and put it in executive session.
Jack.
May I ask to support that? I think we should push this to exec session. There's some serious issues that personnel stuff that we shouldn't be discussing in public.
And again, the only reason why I brought it up in public is because it's already public.
It's okay, but
no problem. No problem.
But we should not talk about it more. So.
Okay.
I think pushing forward, it needs to go to exec session. Mr. President, do you agree?
Yeah, that's what I just said. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. The cash receipt report is here if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, I think we're finished. Thank you.
Okay. I am fine with committee of the whole whenever you want to begin. We have two people from Duquesne Light who I'll let into the meeting here in a second. I just have to finish something on my computer in about 5 seconds, I hope. And two attendees.
If you're ready, whenever you are.
Actually, I'm going to move them to panelists so they can just talk freely. Ms. Blinn and I'm sorry, I don't have the other person in front of me.
Sarah Oleksak.
Okay. Okay, you're so Mr. Erbaldinger, if you want to begin, go ahead with Duquesne Light. It's up to you. However you.
Yeah, we should. I don't know.
May I introduce our guests, please?
Yes, please.
Okay. I was attending a program about beneficial electrification and heard about this Duquesne Light program or series of programs that are helping to evaluate infrastructure and support vehicle electrification in municipalities. And so I invited Hannah Blinn, and she has brought Sarah Oleksak to share with us some of the program availability that might be available to us as we're looking at some of these issues in our town. Hannah, welcome, and Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah, just a quick introduction. So my name is Sarah Oleksak, as mentioned. Thanks for the introduction. I'm the Senior Manager of Transportation Electrification at Duquesne Light. Been with the company for about 4 years, working on standing up Duquesne Light's work to support customers and communities as they choose to install charging stations, add EVs to their fleets, and choose to purchase EVs for their personal use. Before I came to Duquesne Light, I worked for the U.S. Department of Energy in DC and have been working on electric vehicles since about 2005. So long time, and I'm originally from the Pittsburgh area, so it was very rewarding for me to get to come home and start this team. Hannah Blinn has been with our group since earlier this year. We hired her, and some folks on the call might be familiar with Jess Mooney. She came to us from County Executive Fitzgerald's office because we really want to have a focus in our programs in supporting municipalities and local government. We are going to talk today about a couple of new programs that we received approval from our regulatory body, our Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission. We received approval to offer these programs starting this spring, and we just launched. And so we're very pleased to talk to you all about what we have going on. And maybe it will start some engines and I should say not engines, we'll say electric motors thinking about your EV goals in your community and how you might either be able to take advantage of some of these DLC programs, marry them with infrastructure bill funding that's going to be coming down the line, state funding that is already available through the through programs at the state that we can help support you on, and yeah, and just kind of start the relationship here. And really, if you walk away today with one thing, knowing that Hannah, myself, and the rest of the team are here to be an informational resource to you. You know, we don't sell the charging stations, we don't sell the cars. So we're very agnostic and neutral in products and vendors. So we were really just here to help share best practices and information that we're gathering. So with that, if we might, Hannah can share her screen and share some information. Ms. DeMarco, I was going to ask, can you give a recommendation for us about the time that we might have allotted on the agenda?
Our chair asked that we have 10 minutes, but
okay,
you
we
know,
can do that. We can do that.
Great.
Yes, definitely. So let me, actually, oh, here I can share. I am not able to share as a panelist.
Steve, can you give them a screen share, please?
Right now.
Yeah, they want to share a screen.
Perfect.
Yeah, I know. I said
Perfect.
right now.
Okay.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Sarah and I already, kind of gave our little introduction. We are a growing team of 5. And I just wanted to point out, in case anyone is familiar with the Fan Gruber family, Emily Fan Gruber, I know her parents are kind of active in the community and surrounding community. We also have Matt McDonald, and Sarah also mentioned Jess Mooney is another member of our team. And really, the work behind our EV team at Duquesne Light is to address that EV adoption is rapidly growing across the region and our service territory. And we want to be at the forefront of supporting our customers who have EV related goals and interests in providing these to residents of their communities and their businesses. So you can see this demand is growing, and we expect that it's going to triple by 2025. And one big piece of, getting EVs adopted in our region is thinking about infrastructure and charging infrastructure. So as you can imagine, more charging infrastructure is needed in our region to meet this growing demand by 2050. Currently in the area, we have around 390 level 2 charging stations. So those are kind of like the middle level of charging. And to support the growing need, we would need over 2,000 by 2025. I'm sorry, I think I said 2050 before, 2025, to support this demand. Similarly, the DC fast charging. So this is more of that.
Can I just ask a quick question? You're talking about public level 2, not what people have in their garages at home.
Yes.
Way more than that.
Yes, public level 2, I'm sorry. Yeah. And same with the DC fast, these kind of public DC fast charging stations. And typically in our region, a lot of those are the Tesla Supercharge DC fast chargers. So we're hoping to see a growth in DC fast chargers to about 125, and making sure that they are charging stations compatible with all types of.
So I actually pretty well versed in that subject. What do you define as DC fast? Like plus 150, plus 50? Because the old generation DC chargers are kind of useless in my mind.
Sarah, do you?
It's over. This data is defined by how the U.S. Department of Energy, of course, my old employer, characterizes DC fast charging, and that's DC, not AC charging, and DC over 50 kW.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I don't know, semi-useless, but it needs to be faster than that. Okay, but that's what it is.
So our Duquesne Light's new programs around community and fleet charging are essentially that Duquesne Light will design and build the electrical infrastructure up from the power grid up to where charging stations would be installed. And I have a diagram that shows that a little bit better in another slide here. And so what we're looking for is communities interested in installing a minimum of 2 dual port level 2 charging stations is kind of what our minimum requirement for the program is. Of course, if you're interested in installing more, we have those discussions and we talk with municipalities and businesses who are looking for a greater number of stations. And we're here to provide that technical assistance, help you experience savings, not only from being in the Duquesne Light program, but as Sarah mentioned, the state level programming and the money that's available there. And also helping communities meet their goals. You know, a lot of communities in our region have sustainability or environmental or cost savings, emissions, different types of goals, and we want to be there as a partner to help you reach those goals. And so when we're thinking about eligibility for our programs, we're looking at, from a community side, places that are public. So areas that are open to the public where the public can come and use these charging stations. So public parking lots, community parks, a municipal building. Also workplace. So if there are businesses, you know, within the municipality that want to offer this as an amenity to their employees, that's another eligible group. And same with multifamily. So apartment buildings, condos, offering this as something for their tenants to take advantage of. We also offer our fleet charging program where we're specifically looking at municipalities and businesses who own a fleet of vehicles who are interested in exploring, you know, transitioning their fleet over to EV over a certain period of time. And we have some programming to kind of help customers and like look through that kind of business plan, that journey of EV adoption and what that looks like for them. And then providing that infrastructure to support that. So I kind of alluded to this diagram before, but Duquesne Light would cover the cost of installing everything that you see in orange. So from the transformer, there's just the power source, through the meter, install a panel, install the conduit and wiring up to what we call the stub up. And that is where the charging station is installed. So participants in our program are responsible for purchasing and having the charging stations installed into what we are calling the make-ready electrical.
Can I ask one more question? Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Does it even entail, let's say, I want to install 2 350 kW chargers, which probably the power lines don't support. You may need to upgrade your power lines. Would that entail that you pay for that too?
So with our program, you know, looking at a customer's capacity that they have with, you know, their current transformer, if there are upgrades that are needed, that would be covered by Duquesne Light. To your point about the DC, like if they were DC fast charging, so we do have a limited budget for DC fast charging projects. A lot of our projects for this program will be the level 2, but we, you know, we are like open to discussions and we can talk about that. But since they do require a lot more, you know, a lot more power to run,
you can have chargers which are backed up by a battery, so you kind of slowly trickle charge the battery, and then the battery can give fast power to a car. You can probably do something like that, more flexible, I think.
We will definitely need to talk about all your, you know, ideas and use cases for the municipality if this interests you, and it sounds like we've sparked a little bit of interest so far. So again, this is kind of that visual diagram. So Duquesne Light would have ownership of what is in orange for a period of 10 years. So our customers would sign a 10-year agreement and easement. And really this is so that Duquesne Light can maintain and service this equipment over that period of time. And the customer, as I said, would own the charging infrastructure.
And that would be $2,500 to $10,000 per charging station after that period of leasing. Is that right?
I have a table at the end, Patty, that breaks, it'll break it down a little more clear than this one. But yeah, that's a great question. We can show that in a minute. And just quickly back to the fleet side of things. So if Forest Hills was interested in thinking about their fleet, we do provide a free fleet advisory service where we essentially work with our third-party consultants. They take the fleet data and are, reviewing the data, looking at things from total cost of ownership, when would be the best time for the municipality to think about phasing out one vehicle, replacing it with an EV. They have a whole set of, metrics that they are going to help define to help you with that decision making and that, again, that journey to switching over to EV. So it's really a great way to kind of discuss a path forward and see what your options are if you were interested in starting to convert police vehicles, inspector vehicles, just borough-owned vehicles over to EV. So
I have one question, if I may.
Yes.
What's the source of this electricity? Is it renewable source, green, or
Be our provider. It would be
fossil?
Yes. So when we're thinking about what makes a great project, so if you're thinking about, oh, this sounds great for us, we're looking where there can be a strong utilization. So we don't want to install the charging station somewhere and then they don't get used. So thinking about some high visibility places, high trafficked places, places where people might spend, about an hour of their time, if not more, so that they could, get that, hours of a charge in and move on their way. Cost effectiveness.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh.
That didn't quite answer my question.
I'm sorry. I thought Patty had answered that. Yeah, so it's it's just the the Duquesne Light. We are your sorry. Sarah, go ahead.
I was going to jump in. So Duquesne Light is a electricity provider in the state of Pennsylvania. The charging station hosts in our service territory, or the users of electricity in our territory, choose their supplier. If you choose your own supplier, you can control the emissions profile of the electricity that you're using. If you go with Duquesne Light as a default provider, so maybe it's at your home or a business in your community is just using Duquesne Light supply off of the grid that we purchase at market rate, and we do not make a profit on that supply. We pass it through to you. That grid mix locally is about 70% emissions free because we are strongly nuclear. We receive a lot of nuclear power in our territory. And then from there, it's natural gas. And then the smallest portion, I would say the second smallest portion is coal. And then the smallest portion at this time is renewables. And that's, again, the standard default supply. And Ms. DeMarco, you know that if it's a charging station on municipal property, then that's your supplier.
right. So we are in a municipal consortium that uses 100% renewable for what electricity we purchase. And of course, our building is a solar provider, and we're on a net zero basis over the course of the year. So it would depend on whether this charging station went on municipal property or private property. If it was on private property, the owner of the property would determine where the electricity supply comes from. And if it's on municipal property, it would go into our supplier mix, right?
Okay. And thanks, Sarah. So I know we're short on time, so I just wanted to move forward. I'm going to skip a little bit about this, but we do have a process that if you're interested, or if there are businesses or groups in the community that are interested, we do have kind of an application and evaluation process that we go through prior to that, commissioning of the charging stations. I can also make these slides available after the presentation. I did want to talk just very briefly about the other financial incentives. So, we have the Duquesne Light program that we mentioned here, the Driving PA Forward, which is the state incentive that Sarah mentioned. So, depending on the type of site, a project can be eligible for 50 to 80% of project rebates on level 2, specifically charging equipment. And then the alternative fuels incentive grant, which should be opening hopefully here soon. It is a 2-year or a 2 times a year kind of cycle. And this is to help support like the purchasing of hardware, but also electric vehicles.
So
Thank you.
I think in light of our own climate action plan for our community and also our borough goals, I would be interested in seeing if we could have an evaluation of our vehicle fleet. We do already have planned 1 police vehicle to be an electric vehicle, and I think that's within 5 years, if I'm correct. It may be either on order or on the schedule. But I would like to have an evaluation of the condition, and we are acquiring 2 trucks. Does this include things like trucks?
Yes.
Okay.
And off-road vehicles as well. So it could include mowers, golf carts, things that are
Things of that nature. So I don't know how we go about doing that, but I would like to schedule a free evaluation of our fleet.
okay.
And we have been in discussion with our neighbors in Wilkins and Chalfont about a joint application for the Driving PA Forward grant. I don't think they've issued the grant requirements yet for that, if I'm not correct.
They might be releasing a new round here soon, but the current requirements are up there now. I can send you that.
But I mean, there's not one pending. There's a new deadline
right.
pending. I don't think we're
talking
between cycles, right?
About for the DC fast charge, you want to host a DC
Yes.
fast charger?
Yeah.
Who would, can I just ask, who would host it?
Well, that's what we're talking about with our neighbors. We have a couple of locations, but I had an idea about, is the grid in this area sufficient to support like 2 or 3 charging stations? Or would we have to have the infrastructure evaluated?
Hannah, do you want me to answer that one?
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, so the way that this works is just like if a new building is being built, a new factory is coming to town, a new home is built. What we do is we evaluate our service, the circuit that the charging stations are on. And if our customers, we go through that process, and we our transmission planners release a service recommendation upgrade if it's needed. And that may require just upgrading a transformer on a pole, or it might not require anything, and there may be adequate power to the site. So most of the time it does not end up being a major issue, but it's always good to talk to us early and often if you're talking about a very high powered installation, so that we can help you understand if the time frame that you're looking at. The answer is anything's possible. It's just the amount of time it'll take.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other specific questions?
No, I think everything we've talked about gets pretty much in the weeds, and probably we should push it offline to individual people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I will follow up and make some inquiries about what might be appropriate for us, if that's okay with the rest of you, and then give you a kind of a recommendation out from our discussion. And I know we have an energy plan, we have a comp plan, and I think fitting the borough operations into that in a long-term basis, it would have to go into our capital plan, but there also is financial help available. So my concern is that we avail ourselves of evaluations that let us know what resources are available and what our capacity is to acquire an electric vehicle operation station in Forest Hills. Okay. So if there are no other questions, then I thank you so much for coming, and I will be in touch with you a little bit later, and we can talk further.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Mhm.
I guess managers update next.
Yeah, just real quick. This is the third time I mentioned the hybrid meeting. We're going to do that on the 15th. If anybody is not going to be present, I know Ms. DeMarco won't be. If anybody else isn't, I am going to set it up through Zoom, but I am having problems in the room maintaining the look on Zoom. So while you may be able to see us, it's not a guarantee that we'll see and or hear you. I don't know. So I am going to provide anybody who tells me they can't be there with the option that I could also set up a conference phone bridge, or if it's only one person, Ms. DeMarco, she could also just call into our conference number, our conference phone, and that way you could still see us on Zoom from where you are, and we would be able to hear you. So if anybody else thinks they won't be present on the 15th, let me know. Now, this is different. I'm not opening this up to the public. The public will be able to see it on YouTube, but they're not going to be participating remotely. They're going to be participating, only those people who are here are going to be participating remotely there. But this will allow council members to, to be able to do that. I again think that you might want to double check with Mr. Corbel about what's allowed as far as quorums are concerned. Whether that's tonight or not, that's up to you, but I just want to mention.
Quorum is the same like always. We need to have 4 people in the council chamber physically present in order to make the meeting valid.
I believe that's correct. So
Yeah,
I'm done.
Just to follow up, we've verified that with Mr. Corbel. The quorum is 4 people on ground, and then after that, we can have voting and just pushing forward. Everyone's doing a great job trying to get this thing together. If it doesn't work perfectly on June 15th, it's not a problem. We're gonna.
Should we set up like Steve, I'm not sure if you have time, maybe a rehearsal meeting on Tuesday or earlier on Wednesday? Would that be useful for you?
I mean, I'm the one who has to run it, so it doesn't really make any difference to me. I mean, rehearsing doesn't help me anyway, whether there's one person there, no person's there, or everybody there. So I mean, there's no sense in you guys all being bothered.
Okay.
No, it's a good test, and let's check it out. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure out the problems. No problem.
At the worst, I would have to call in on the conference line, that's all.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
You should still be able to see via Zoom.
Let's just use it as a test and see how it goes. We'll learn from it. It's not a problem.
I do apologize for being absent for this meeting, but it's my grandson's graduation. I have one grandson. He graduates one time. So I apologize. I've only missed council meetings in my 6 years on council, so.
All right, moving forward.
All right, next we have solicitors report.
Yeah, I do not have a report tonight. I think a lot of my updates will come to all next week in executive session as per normal. But I would also echo Jack's comments that I have been through a lot of hybrid meetings, and just be patient. There's always a kink or two in the process, but ultimately when you get it up and running, it's a nice benefit, if you will, to members of council who may not be able to attend, or if I'm unable to attend or Mr. Morris can't be there in person, it's a nice feature, I think, moving forward. It's one of the few good things that maybe COVID brought to us here. So that's all I have.
Next, committee business report. I was considering doing something or talking about Woodland Hills School District, but I think there's nothing. I talked to Mike Belmont. There's nothing really what we can do at the moment, so I'm pretty much taking it off the agenda. And then,
okay, good.
B, no grass lawn concept. I'm not sure where it came from.
That's me.
Okay.
This had come up in an email to me specifically from a resident that lives on Cherry Valley Road, where there's a lot of ponding, but other residents are interested in doing things that don't have grass in their lawns for a variety of reasons. Maintenance, people can't cut their grass anymore. It gets expensive, try to find somebody to do it. Plus, environmentally, people don't want to run gas lawnmowers. So,
Yeah.
and what this resident would like to do is plant native sedges and other plants on her lawn that actually soak up water, kind of like have a rain garden. And the only ordinance we could find, and it was sort of written in the Tree City Times, what Dawn made mention to, the 6-inch lawn cutting height. And it sounds like a lot of people aren't paying attention to that. But this resident's
Hey, Barb.
concern was, yes?
Here's
Jack?
a thought. I was thinking about what you said, and given we have so many hillsides, and if you go up Cheryl Lane, people have just, their hill is so nasty, they just cover it with trees. So I'm thinking that it may be a concern without a problem. I think we're okay. We may not have an ordinance that totally addresses this issue, but we have so many hillsides that people have to cover with anything because you can't cut the grass. I think we may be okay in just letting it slide. What do your other folks think?
Well,
Actually,
one of the concerns is that people are going to try to plant a meadow in their front yard, and that can get to be 3 feet high unless we have
Oh, okay.
a
Okay, I
specific
get that. Yeah.
ordinance or something on the books. Sorry,
Okay.
go ahead.
I get that. And
Yeah, I
Okay.
think, a lot of people I've noticed also have covered their hillsides with things like ivy, English ivy, which tends to get really invasive and take down a number of trees if you don't pay attention to it. And I know there are at least 2 patches I'm aware of where wild bamboo has been somehow introduced and is taking over whole hillsides, as well as whole properties taken over by knotweed when the lawns have gotten out of control. So I think it would be helpful to have some guidance. Not sure it needs to be an ordinance, but suggestions of, ground covers, certainly trees on the hillsides help to hold the hillsides because the root systems tend to be stabilizing, and those are a good thing, especially if they're too steep to build on or walk on. So I'm not sure we need an ordinance, but I think we may need some guidance to people who want to have.
yeah, I'm not sure where to go with that either, because
Yeah.
yes, we've got people planting bamboo and it's gone crazy.
Yeah.
And you got hillsides, your front lawns, there's no way you can have grass on it. And I don't know if anyone has guidance on that, that'd be good. I think an ordinance would probably cause trouble.
Yeah.
Well, the
I
only
think
reason
maybe-
why I bring up an ordinance is Ferguson Township. It's the only place I have reference to. They have something under managed natural landscapes, which provides some guidelines. People don't want to go to the expense of doing this and then get a citation. I think
Yeah.
we need to move on this a little bit. I don't know about an ordinance, but.
Could you
I'm
share
bringing
that
it up.
Ferguson document with us? Could we have a look at it?
I don't have that.
Yeah,
now,
let's
but
check
I
it
can
out.
get it.
Okay, could you find it? And, we
Yes.
can maybe have a look at that, because
I
I
mean-
think that might be helpful.
Is that
I mean,
Ferguson?
our own borough building has those, like the rain garden, which is not a lawn. So I think there is just, I think someone like you, Bob, maybe just needs to talk to Don Pransell, what should be included in the 6-inch rule and what not. I think Don knows not to cite us for our rain garden, which is certainly higher than 6 inches, but sometimes it just looks like a lawn, which is not cut. But maybe someone has like a fancy wildflower bed inside their lawn, front yard, and it's probably fine. I think maybe, Bob, you can just clarify with Dawn and talk about if there are issues or not.
I have already,
Okay.
and that's why I'm bringing it up to Kyle. I think if a person has a neat lawn and there's no weeds, it should be okay, but I don't know that. So
My perception would be that this is a problem without a solution without a problem right now. Yes, someone could bring us and fuss about it, but since we haven't had anyone come to really fight about it, I think we're probably okay, is my guess. And you guys can help me with that. But yeah, people will come up with innovative things to have new lawns, and my guess is that we will probably be okay with that. But, you know, you have a very good point. It would violate certain rules. Good point.
But we don't want to cite dedicated gardeners who have something fancy going on in their front yard. That should be our goal, I think. So whatever we have
And
to do.
in fact, we can find a way within the construct of our ordinances to make that okay. And I think common sense would intrude, but you never know. Sometimes common sense does not.
Cecil,
So
Watkins,
Barb
you have
has a
the
very
hand
good point.
Cecil,
I just think that it would be best to be proactive. If we had some type of rule, some type of ordinance, it's always better to have that in place rather than trying to gather the horses after they're out of the barn. You never know, we could get 2 or 3 people that move here from someplace and they just decide they want to do this exotic, never seen before type of growth. And rather than fight that after it's there, I'd rather have something in place ahead of time.
so my suggestion would be, Bob, I think you seem to be the most qualified for that. Would you be willing to do some research what other townships, boroughs have in their ordinances and maybe present it to ops and policy?
Sure.
Just to get it started.
Yeah, would you okay with that? Because again, we don't want to create more trouble than we need. But it would be great to see what you can come up with.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you. I'll take care of that.
Thanks, everyone. Next, we have
Thank you, Barb.
reporting on council-approved projects. Well, that was requested by Angelo. Angelo, you want to?
Yes. I just would like to suggest that when council has a project that gets approved, like for instance, a Boy Scout project or something along those lines, that when the project is either nearing completion or it's completed, that those individuals or that group come back before council and provide a presentation as to what the disposition is. The reason that came to my attention was Ms. Martin showed me an article that was put out by the Rotary Club, and it included Coke Park, where the Boy Scouts had done this labyrinth. And I know that came up for discussion in committee at some point, but it appeared on Nextdoor. Somebody asked the question, what is this? Where did it come from? And then there was the article by the Rotary Club. So I think we're missing opportunities to make some announcements of projects and things that we've accomplished through the council by not including those. And that's all.
I'm pretty sure the Boy Scouts, they have to give public speeches and things like that. Especially for them, it would be probably nice to actually talk about 5 minutes at a council meeting about their project. But I want to highlight one problem we had at that, at the bird sanctuary. They put like a garbage can up, but no one ever talked about how to empty that garbage can if we want a garbage can. Sometimes I think, like with the band shell, since it's like a big project, we really have legal contracts talking about the handover, how we take over the ownership. But even like little Boy Scout sport, I think we have to have a little bit more like a handover once the project is finished back to us. Right. I think it's 5 minutes and maybe a little discussion would be good for that.
Would you like me to ask the Rotary to come on June 15th to discuss this project? I'm going to Rotary tomorrow morning.
Well, that would be okay, but it's like already done. It's been publicized.
Going forward.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
If I may intrude a bit, we had the Boy Scout project and we had these other projects, and we all say, that's okay, cool. And then somehow we get a garbage can we can't empty and stuff like that. I think we should be a little more proactive in evaluating all these proposals, even the nice Boy Scout things, and say, hey, you have to do it within the construct of what we approve. And I think that's not been going on. And I'm not sure how we should do that.
Yeah, and let's not limit, I'm not focusing on the Boy Scouts, but I think it's all the projects, even our own projects where we
It's
don't.
an exemplary moment
Right.
that it tells us we're all trying to do really good things, but then we get in a situation like that. And how do we structure all these activities to not cause a problem?
Right, and again, not so much for the problems, but just for publicizing that something was accomplished. That we
Yeah,
set out to do something that was
good point.
accomplished. Get it on the
Very good
website, get it on Savvy Citizen, and just let the public know.
Yeah, like the Boy Scouts did that wonderful thing with the what they did, and that should be in Savvy Citizen. We should brag about it, but we also have to address other issues. Yes.
Right.
All right. Sounds good. So next, CDP scoring, Patty.
Okay, this is, we participated in the Eichley Climate Action Plan for our community. They have developed an evaluation questionnaire on the governance process. We missed the deadline of May 31st to get into the process. I'm sorry, I missed that there was a deadline on it, but we still need to do some kind of an annual report on our climate plan for the Eichley system that we used on our modeling. And I know the Environmental Advisory Council is going to be looking at a survey that was developed for the residential sector at their meeting next Thursday. But I think we haven't really taken hold of how we're going to evaluate progress on the climate action plan on a community-wide basis. We have taken action on dealing with the borough buildings because we've acquired Siemens to help us do the audits, which are going to happen this week, and look at how we can get into a more annual updating of what's going on. The consolidated utility data will not be sufficient to track the kind of changes that we were asking for, the 3.5% reduction per year on average. So we're looking for some tools that would give us a better handle on whether we're making any progress and what kinds of things we might do to help the community respond to the plans that we've made as well. I know we had an article in the Tree City Times giving people some suggestions and resources to use for their own homes. We've been working on the transportation side, but I think we need to make some decision at some point about where we go about tracking our progress on these climate action plan that we've adopted. And I don't know what committee it falls under. I don't know what structure in the council we have put in place for tracking progress to something that has, 20 and 30-year goals. So I wanted to put that up for discussion.
I would like to make a comment. My concern with that kind of thing is who's doing the work? I mean, it sounds like a lot of work. And the climate action plan and the active transportation plan, in my mind, even it says plan at the end, it's not a plan like we want to implement that it's set in stone. It's goal. So if that scoring requires a full-time employee or an intern or whatever, I'm concerned about that. So just want to make the point.
Okay, well, we did have interns during the development of both of those plans, and we had grants to support them. So I know we don't have a dedicated staff support. I've been basically doing this pro bono to date, and I'm not sure that that's going to be a viable process on the way forward. So I wanted to look at, how serious are we about implementing these plans that we've adopted, and what kinds of issues do we need to take up as we're looking at our budget to see if these are things we want to actually do, or if they will just become plans on the shelf that, people point to and say, oh yeah, we adopted a plan. Because if we're actually going to get serious about it, then we do need to do some implementing. And we need to pay attention to what it takes for that to happen. Yes.
I do have a question. Do you have a proposal for a full-time employee or 3 full-time employees or whatever to cover this?
Well, I know that in other communities, they've hired, either they've gone to the extent of hiring a sustainability coordinator who does the planning stuff and grant writing and a number of other things. Other communities have had part-time people or interns who are there on a regular basis to whom this body of work is assigned. I haven't had a discussion, with the council about how serious.
So
you are.
you're suggesting is we do increase staffing?
Well, I think if
support
you're
this.
going to have somebody do the monitoring, the surveying, the, updating of the models and so forth on a regular basis, it is not within the capacity of the staff that we have as configured now.
All right, so, yeah, so it's cool. So you're suggesting like a full-time or part-time or what?
Well, I don't know. I think it depends on how intensely we want to pursue this. And I think we need to do some exploration about it, but I didn't want to leave it just hanging. I think as we're
Oh,
heading
no,
through
that's
the
fine,
budget
that's fine.
process.
I think it would be
like to
helpful
introduce-
to suggest, what you actually think we would need in terms of full or part-time staffing to
I don't think
handle-
it takes a full-time person. I think it would be helpful to have a part-time staff dedication to this, whether it's part of someone else's job or whether we need to acquire a half or a partial person.
Okay.
I think we
So
need to talk about that.
What do you say you look at what you've been thinking about and suggest what you think would be best?
Okay.
Part-time?
In
I
my
think that'd
mind-
be helpful.
In my mind, those kind of things are a lot of work. They're good for bragging rights, but they don't do us any good. The same thing like when we had our municipal building, we were discussing, do we want to have it LEED certified? And it turns out to get LEED certification costs about $50,000 for
Yeah,
paper
that was-
pushing, but we didn't do it.
Right.
So in my mind, that's kind of a similar thing. If we have to pay money, doesn't matter indirectly for labor or whatever, I don't know. I
So
think
Marcus,
it's
you
more-
think that we just adopt a climate action plan and leave it to implement itself?
I mean, we always said for those plans, they're goals. And I didn't know that we have to get a full-time or whatever, even.
Well, there's no way we're going to implement this unless somebody does some work to reach out to the community and actually help to have this thing get implemented. It isn't going to implement itself. We have taken steps to implement on the borough side for our own properties.
That's good. And it, I
We
think
have
it makes
control over
sense.
that. But we have not done any outreach really to the community other than a couple of surveys and articles in the paper. And I don't know how seriously you're all taking the climate issue, but we have adopted a plan, we have goals. If we're not going to do anything to implement those in the community, then we should just say so.
I take it personally seriously too, but I don't want to do like, I have 2 electric cars, solar panels on my roof, but I don't want to spend like an hour a week to do some paper pushing, justifying why I have that. You know? So like the Westinghouse rack, if you get like a heat pump to heat the building, fine. It makes sense. We buy it and then we get a return. But I don't want to spend like hours to report for bragging rights. That's my point.
It
But I
isn't
don't think we want to.
It's helping to track the community
I know.
progress on implementing a climate plan. I mean, 3% reduction in emissions per year isn't going to happen by itself
Yes.
for 30
But
years.
that thing is a paper pushing exercise, I think. But we can take it offline. We can keep talking.
Okay, thank
We
you.
need to do research how much time it actually takes to do that. So next, I think
Okay.
it's back to you, fracking ban.
Okay, pushing forward, what's next?
I distributed the testimony that I want to give on Thursday to the county council. I would like to present on behalf of the borough. We did adopt an ordinance banning fracking. This is a proposal to ban fracking in the Allegheny County parks, which I would like to support. I sent the testimony around to everybody last night.
Now, I'm in favor of that. That doesn't cost us anything. For
No, it
example.
doesn't cost anybody anything.
Yeah, except your time, which is precious
Well,
too.
it's already, my time is already spent and that's not a problem.
So anyone else in council has an opinion on that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does our ordinance, I think we just need to be careful. We don't really ban fracking with our ordinance, right? We kind of zone. it.
No, That's right.
You know,
I-
we
and
ban
I
within
meant-
a certain.
I mentioned the name of our ordinance and the fact that we had used it, you know.
And I'm sorry, I saw the email. I did not read the
That's okay.
testimony. Do you intend to just encourage them to adopt similar language
They
or?
have proposed a ordinance at the county level that would prohibit fracking in the county parks as an industrial activity. Because they
Yeah.
did not ban it in the Deer Lakes Park. And there have been studies now documenting the contamination that has resulted to the drinking water, not only in the park, but in several communities surrounding the park into which their lake is used for drinking water.
What is your goal of this discussion, Connie?
I just wanted to let the council know that
We
this.
need to approve it, that she can do it on behalf of Forest Hills Council.
I don't want to speak on behalf of council without letting you know and having you say that that's okay,
Okay.
because
Oh,
I don't,
that's fine.
otherwise
I'm
I
sorry.
as an individual.
I just wanted to clarify. I apologize.
And thanks for answering my question, Patty.
Okay.
I'm good.
Next, we have volunteer fire department report. The chief is not present, so you can just look at it at your own time. And
May I make a comment on the report?
yes,
I'd just like to point out that it's very thorough and comprehensive. That's it.
yeah, it's always, that's why it takes him so long. You know, he always says if you have our meeting, public safety on the second, third, he doesn't have enough time. I can see that, especially if he's like, you know, working on like railroad derailments and things like that. That's why I think it justifies why he needs extra time. Yeah. Anything else?
Yes, sir.
Next week, we will have an executive session to talk about a bunch of stuff. Just to remind everyone.
Okay, I guess then that's it. Good
Yeah.
night, everybody. I'm ending the meeting. See you next.
Good night.